explain a little bit about the basis and what happens in this world of deepfake to some of our audience? Majority should know what the topic is, but just to make sure everybody understands what's the threat.
Beata, you've actually got a point about, is this a year privacy diet? People predict that all the time, and obviously it's a great title to get people to know the context of what we're discussing. But essentially it evolves, it always evolves, and anything around deepfake that actually attacks in an adversarial point of view, an adversarial AI point of view, or it alters a reality, if it's not done from a privacy preserving perspective, I respect you and I expect what I do to continue and demonstrate that respect, that human construct, then we should always query it. And often with technologies like this, when they're in their infancy, which largely they still are, then it's an explore space. But as technologists, I'm one of the original 250 technologists that founded the digital economy in the UK. We have always had a key piece of what we do as technologists, which is more than our philosophy. It's the reason we do what we do. We've always felt a responsibility and an accountability for what we build. So while facial recognition technologies that are being used on the platforms, that are being put into the consumer's hands, actually have specific use case, what I would like to say is most of us, very much almost all of us across the world, have in mind an understanding of whether it's ethical, whether it's moral, and whether it's privacy preserving. When we talk about privacy, we can have debates about privacy, but that's usually around how something does something. And what I talk about is the outcome. Is it privacy preserving to do what that's done? I think the Barack Obama deepfake shocked people. The idea that the 44th president could say things, seemingly, that actually in his voice, in the way, his mannerisms, and actually it wasn't him, began to move into that adversarial AI. All of this is a spectrum. And if we talk about advisory AI versus adversarial AI, deepfake is very much towards that adversarial AI. The more holistic you are in the way you approach your technology and the way you build your technology, the more inclusive you are with the people that are involved in that, the more likely you are to be able to challenge that bias when you're building the models, training the models, deploying the models. If you're raising Gen Alpha, this is your world now. Whether you know it or not, this is your world. This is being built for your children because that's the way they learn. And so I think all of us have a responsibility to understand the issues around this, but to be able to realize it exists and then try to look at what the motivation is behind something that we see, because that will give you an idea of whether we're in the adversarial spectrum or the advisory spectrum. And so challenge it. That's the human piece.
We had discussion about artificial intelligence, how it's going to destroy the nations, how technology is going to destroy the nation. And I would call it Generation MTV. And I remember how I was watching MTV after the collapse of Berlin Wall. That was the closest thing I could get to the abroad and feeling that wave of new coming. And people were scared, what is going to come up out of these MTV people, because there was so much sexual things and moves, and Bravo Girl at the time, it wasn't my popular, but I remember, all these topics about talking first night and stuff, and somehow we are here. We are not killing people. We are not prostituting. This is how you make your life meaningful. And this is up to you, whether you use it for good or bad.
Technology is neutral, but it's the human that decides where it is on advisory to adversarial scale. But when you think of it in the context of Generation Z, their motivations, their inspirations, their missions are very different to the previous generation of the millennials. So the impact is going to be very different. And they are less likely to consult us or respect any of the institutions that don't meet those ambitions. The isolation economy as we have now, the COVID crisis, has caused us to spotlight and question some of these things. But usually Generation Z asks no permission, they just do. And they can, and they're quite capable of doing it themselves.